This is the Lyndsay Stafford Show.
Welcome back to the Lyndsay Stafford Show, featuring local legends here in Middle Tennessee. This is the Entrepreneurs Podcast, and I am really excited to have my dear friend Brooke O'Dell here today. She is just an incredible human, and we're going to talk about failed business and coming back from that. So this is going to be an exciting episode to listen to if you've ever felt like you made a mistake in business and you can't come back from it, or you don't know how to restart, or you've ever failed at any portion of business, or you've lost a business. We're going to talk through some of that, and there's going to be a lot of golden nuggets. She's super intelligent and has a lot of experience and a lot to share, and I'm really honored to have her here. So thanks for tuning in to the Lyndsay Stafford Show. Brooke O'Dell, so great to have you here.
So glad to be here.
We've become friends over the last few years. Gosh, is it maybe 2 years about?
I think so. I was trying to think about that, but I think that that's about right.
Yeah. And you know how there's just like people that you just kind of connect with? I feel like that happened for us. We like had this kind of instant connection of like, how can we help how can we figure out how we work together?
Right.
What can we do together?
Right. Exactly.
And I find I do that with a lot of people. If I really like them, it's like, okay, well, I want to be around you. I want to do more. How can we do this? So we've done a lot of different things together. But at the time when we met, you owned the store Sugar Drop. And so I was having your team send gifts to my clients. You were putting articles in my magazines. It was such a cool thing we started together. Now, fast forward to where we are today, and Sugar Drop has been closed. And that's been quite the journey. I've been honored to be a part of that journey with you as you kind of work through all of that. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today. And I want you to share maybe how you got started with that business, and then we'll dig into the other stuff with it.
Yeah. So Sugar Drop, it was 50 years old by the time we bought it. So, we were able to take something that was kind of a staple in the community and really breathe fresh life into it. It was kind of a sad business at that point. I was very familiar with it. So I am a self-taught baker. I picked up a book and learned how to do this years ago. And so a friend of mine had said, there's this little store that is for sale and I think you should look at it and I think you should buy it. And I was like, oh, I don't know how you buy a business. So I reached out to a dear friend of mine, kind of the smartest gal I know, and just said, how do you buy a business? And she said, I don't know, let me go look at it. And several weeks went by and it kind of fell off my radar, honestly. And she called one day on a Tuesday and said, I went and looked at that business and I would like you to go look at it. And then I want us to have dinner. And I said, okay. And so I went on a Wednesday and looked around this place. And I just immediately had a vision on my heart from this. And so the next night we sat and had dinner, and we had done a lot of personal life together. And so very, very dear friends. And she said, if you have this business, what would you do with it? And for, I think, a solid hour, I just poured out everything really that God had placed on my heart as a visionary and as a creative, and really just wanting to create a community, just a safe space, something that was kid-oriented, something within my craft, but a place where you could come learn and really feel loved. And she looked at me and just said, I think God brought us together so I can help you with that dream. And we signed papers on Saturday for that. So it was a very fast purchase. And really for me, I'm such a creative. And so I was so forward with designs and aesthetics and so many of those pieces that in hindsight, looking back, I'm like, there were probably other elements that I should have focused on a little bit as far as business goes. But we were just winging it. So we were able to stay in that location through 2020. But I already knew that we had needed to grow the space because we were wanting to grow the bakery element of it. It was a retail shop and bakery and an event space. And so I began the journey looking for a new location in 2019, found my dream location to build and design, was given the lease in March 2020, and kind of told the owners, I said, I need to just hold on to this for a few weeks because obviously we don't know what's about to pan out.
Mm-hmm.
And we overnight.
What a gift. Like,
it
seriously,
was amazing.
Praise the Lord.
It was amazing. But really overnight, our bakery and our little tiny, I mean, and I'm saying like my kitchen, I think was maybe 500 square feet. It was tiny. And overnight, we started doing 4 times our normal products out of that little tiny kitchen. And so it was very affirming that making a move to make that kind of a forward section of the business was the correct move. So we signed the lease in May. Again, I was able to just design the dreamiest, most wonderful location. And so we moved in October 2020 to that location. And we had our best year in 21. And 22 is when things really started to kind of shuffle for us. And then ultimately we closed the doors in July last year of 24. So yeah, it was amazing business though.
A crazy whirlwind. And, I'm thinking about these seasons of our life. And as you know, we're not in our 20s anymore. So I think when you get into your 40s and 50s and beyond, you kind of reflect on the value of seasons and not the challenges just that you went through, but how did you come out of that? And that's such a gift. And I think when you're younger or maybe less experienced, you might not understand the value of going through challenges that make you who you are. Correct. But I know you're on the other side and you do. And through our conversations that haven't not on a podcast, I know that you understand the value of that. So I'm curious, because it is not often that you get to hear from a business owner that says, yeah, I'm still successful in my own right in what I'm doing with my life now and all the things that you have going on, but I'm willing to talk through this maybe perceived by others as a failure, and maybe it was perceived by you as a failure. And in fact, I think you do feel that way in some degree, to some degree. But I'm curious, when you look back on that experience, you already started talking about one point. What did you learn that you will do differently or would tell a different business owner, hey, I learned not to do this. I learned I should have done this. What are some of those key moments for you?
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, my background was design and marketing, merchandising. And so I knew I had that kind of in the bag. Really, I just felt that. But there are other elements that are really hard when you're operating a business, when you're growing a team. When the day we moved into our new location, my team went from 4 to 14 overnight. And without solid structure in place, especially in regards to HRs and trainings and all of that, you're kind of asking for the pot to get stirred so much before it explodes to a degree. I had some vendors that are people that are essential for operating a business that honestly didn't do their part to support me enough as a business owner. And I didn't realize that I should have been able to expect more and asked more and been provided that service. Because there were areas that I was very vulnerable in saying, I really want your help in this. And they're like, okay, we can help you. And it never came to fruition. And I really should have been more firm. Part of the issue was I was so busy in the day-to-day operating the business that it was such survival mode for so long, especially when we'd have seasons of high staff turnover or things like that. That, really being able to go to whoever you're doing business with, whether that's your accountant, your realtor, and saying, these are my expectations. This is what I have to have out of this relationship. Before I sign papers with you, I want to make sure that this is very clear of what I'm expecting from you as a person I'm paying, that you're going to uphold for me. Because I always approached it as a learning opportunity. And there are several things looking back that I'm like, man, I really wished I had been able to learn this aspect of it a little bit better. So, again, the feel and the vibe and all those things in my business, I did so well, but there were some of those elements that are kind of the backbone crux of your business that if you don't have those key elements really nailed down, they can be detrimental. And I also had several different business coaches, advisors over the years too. And again, looking back on that, a lot of that was a huge disappointment for me. It was a lot of money I put out without really understanding what any kind of value was in that. And some of those relationships ended really harshly because of the disappointment on my end.
Yeah.
And more than anything, it was working with people who were putting my business in a box that was not my business. Because when you operate a retail style business, that is not at all the same as a single entrepreneur or a multi-level marketing business or a corporate environment where everybody can kind of sign out and go to lunch together. And so there were a lot of challenges that I dealt with, even facing global pandemic shutdown,
Right.
where I would just say, I'm putting my foot down on this and you're going to have to disagree with me because I understand my business better than you do. And I know what I need to do in order to even just survive. And so there were several challenges like that. In hindsight, I was working with people who just couldn't communicate their value to me clearly, or we were just speaking different languages really, in the way that we needed to operate versus what their approach was to how I operated.
Yeah, it's really hard. You talk about this a lot. I just recorded an episode on Jim McCarthy's podcast, mostly Middle Tennessee business podcast, and I can't even say it. Mostly Middle Tennessee business podcast. And one of the things that he asked me to articulate was, I do coaching and consulting work at Stafford Solutions. We do marketing, advertising, coaching, and consulting. And I have the guarantee with coaching and consulting that if you hire my team and I had to come in and we don't fill what we commit to doing, or you feel like we haven't done that, then don't pay us. Mm-hmm. And that's something that's a big commitment to put out there, to say, we're going to come do the work. We're going to eat the cost. We're going to pay for all the stuff. And then if it doesn't pan out, I'm out that, I haven't had to do it yet. Knock on wood. Right. I haven't had to refund money on that. But at the same time, to your point, it's because of that, because I know how many people have invested in a coach or consultant that don't deliver because they don't understand what they're going through. And you and I have connected on such a different level in that I was in retail for 20 years. I understand the retail space like most people do not.
Right.
And you have a retail location. Nothing makes me more sad. Well, okay, there are things that make me more sad. In business, one of the things that makes me sad is when I look at a business, and we've had this conversation, and I can say, it's going to close. They're not, especially retail location. There are too many red flags for me that it needs to be fixed. And I remember walking into a store. I told you this story. They're closed now. But I remember walking into a store, and it was about 3.5 years ago that I walked in and I met with the owner. And I said, every time I come in here, there's nobody here. People need to know you're here. And there was a whole lot of other things that they needed to do differently too. But this is a problem. And the business owner was so offended by me being truthful and saying, you are going to be in trouble if you don't fix this problem. Now, apparently, however I said it offended her, and maybe it wasn't real sensitive. Sometimes I can be pretty black and white. But the truth of the matter is, guess what? I was right, and they closed.
Right.
And that makes me so sad, because there were things that could have been done to save that business. And when a business closes, it's heartbreaking to watch.
It is.
So you also hit this point on, you knew what you were going to do really well because you know what you're good at. And I feel the same way. What I know is I'm not good at a lot of things. I'm actually really bad at a lot of things. But I'm really good at a couple things. And so I try to live in those lanes, and then I hire people to do everything else. If you had it to do over, would you have hired somebody to do the operational piece, since you were really, your strength was not in that piece, and it's really in because you are phenomenal. When I think about marketing and branding and social media, like, you're so good at it.
Yeah.
And and the visual aspect and all of those things you're really great at. Would you have hired somebody to do that piece?
Yeah. So, especially when we were making the build and taking on such a large project, really. I mean,
a build out's not a joke.
No. And you're talking about a long-term lease. I mean, we had a 7-year lease. We had a very expensive retail prime property as well. And so, I was so great about budgeting out for every little element, branded cups and rugs, and I mean, you name it. but I didn't do a great job of going, I need a key person that I have a decent salary built in to cover me, to support me from the time I turn the key.
Right.
And I had some managers in place over the years. I mean, I had several different managers or staff members that were with me for 2 to 3 years, which is awesome in the retail environment, really. But there were elements where, I thought I would like for you to do this job and this be your strong suit. And that wasn't necessarily the case either. And so it's something that I talk about now of, you really have to build a job first without a specific person in mind to take that job. Because if you're designing a job around a person, you're going to let yourself slip because you're not hiring for the best fit for what your needs are with your business. And I have a dear friend of mine that came in towards the end of my ownership that, goodness, I mean, I think back, I'm like, if I could have afforded her and had her from day one, there's really no telling what our business would have looked like, because that is her language, that operation, that finance, that human resources, that training. I mean, that is her zone. And I had the vision for what I wanted, but part of my husband always was like, I was too nice. Like I would just kind of let things slip and take care of it. Plus, not to mention my own kid worked for me, half the kids in our youth group, there's those elements that it's just my nature to want to be so forgiving and all that. But part of the things you can't overlook in business when it's your operation. And so, yeah, I mean, being able to hire somebody to take on skills that you're not necessarily good at is crucial, because it takes away from the gift of what I'm really good at, which is the creating element of it and teaching and just creating that entire environment. But I also got to the point I couldn't even think about the next menu because I was just so in the weeds of dealing with the operation portion of it as well. And I mean, there were things that we did, financially to try to keep on going, that, killed us, but it was, when you're taking out debt just to pay your payroll, but then you're having to pay on the debt that you've taken out to pay on payroll, like that's a cycle you're never going to be able to break. And so, even till the very end, we had massive opportunities still come to us, but those things also take big chunks of cash to succeed. And so, there were just a lot of hard decisions we did have to make ultimately, but yeah, having that key person who does the things that you're not necessarily good at, it's so crucial for a business.
It really is. And you brought up a point that I think we can spend some time on, which is every visionary creative. Most entrepreneurs are a visionary or creative, right? And you and I both fall into that category. Now, most entrepreneurs also have to be an operator or executor at the beginning of their stages, because you don't start with a team typically unless you're taking on investors and that kind of thing.
Right.
But if you're doing this on your own, you're going to start with, you are the person who wears 5 hats every day.
Right.
But the important, and this is a struggle with, I talk to lots of business owners and work with a lot of business owners, and most of them, I had a conversation yesterday with one, and we were talking about what was right for their business, for, how I could help them. And I asked a lot of questions like, do you want to sell your business eventually? Do you want to hire someone to take over? This person is the main operator, right? And this person said, no, I don't trust anyone. This is my family name and I don't want, and I'm like, yeah, I can totally relate. My business, Stafford Solutions, it is my name, right? I get that. But you have to decide at one point, if you want to grow, then you have to have another person with you. And most people don't hire that first, they make a mistake and they don't hire that first person soon enough. And they end up struggling for a long time or failing because they haven't hired the person that's good at the things they're not. And so for most businesses, it's an admin or an assistant is like the first thing they need to hire. Now, in today's world, there's virtual assistant. I mean, there's so many options for that. So there's really no excuse. There's AI. We could go into a whole rabbit hole of that with AI assistants and virtual. There's that piece. But then there truly is the executor the operator, and the visionary. And each business needs to have all of those, the operator, the executor, and the visionary. And the operator can help bring the visionary's vision to life, and then the executor goes and does it, right?
Right.
And so there's those three elements, and you kind of hit on that of know what you're good at and then don't do the rest. So if you were to redo, let's say that you were opening Sugar Drop 2.0 tomorrow, not that you are, but let's just pretend in fantasy world. What would you do if you were to buy another location, open another location? What's the first thing you're doing?
Yeah. So I would really begin with thinking, what are the things that really brought me joy? And what did I feel like were products or things we wanted to be known for? Because part of that, as a creative, I overcreated myself into a pigeonhole, honestly. I mean, I can look back and see, seasons where I might have designed 5 milkshakes that we photographed, but I never once got them past a photo on my phone. I never once got them to be a piece of marketing that anyone ever knew that it ever existed. And so that's something that you think about when you think about like a franchise model. Typically they do one thing and they do it very well. And there is a very strategic reason for that, because for me, my things were so gorgeous and so many layers involved that the training to create and then to teach a 16-year-old, here's how you're going to make this product that's going to have 17 elements to it. I mean, I have teenagers, like it's a different language that you're speaking. And so really being able to say, okay, because part of when I took on Sugar Drop, again, I had been doing cakes for 11 years that were very different. I mean, we're talking fondant, sculpted, carved, painted, all the things. And I was like, you know what? I want a line of products, and that's all we do. And it very slowly, that line started slipping to where we got more into custom work. And then if I'd have certain artists come in, they would want to do a certain thing. And so I'm taking a cake that I know I can make in 5 minutes, and I know what my return is on that, my ROI on that product. Now I've moved into the same size cake that I'm charging maybe $15 more, but it took that artist 3 or 4 hours to make. Your so
ROI
much
is
money.
Yeah.
You're already tanked at that point. And so for whatever reason, I mean, part of it is we wanted to meet the customers where they were. But again, part of that was not having the operation very, very strong of going, no, we're not going to do that. And this is what we're going to be known for. And so I always kind of joked around about if there was another version of me, there would be a lot we didn't do. And it wasn't because we didn't like those things or because they weren't amazing products. It was because it took away from what we really wanted to be known for. And so, I really think, again, as creatives, trim off that fat and really start to get your focus very narrowed on what you want to do. Because, again, I can create and create and create all day long, but your customer also comes in and feels overwhelmed when they're like, I have no idea you even did that, much less this other thing as well, So you're kind of setting yourself up to not be successful in the most bizarre way when you think you're doing something awesome, Yeah,
I think about it like in retail. Do you remember the store Gymboree?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, they went from, I'll use it as an example. This is totally back when I was in the thick of the retail days, but they went from like this store that had the cutest, they always had the cutest outfits. We had a box of every bow that they had, like all the little curly bows as bow, or all of those, every color, every outfit, all of them, all from Gymboree. And they went from that to they were struggling, which they ended up closing. And they were so over assorted, you could not shop the store because you couldn't even move things on the rack.
Right.
Nothing made sense. There was no seasonality. And actually, a Children's Place, I think, is like that now. It's a disaster. To me, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't even walk by that store. It makes me, the retailer in me is going crazy. But I think about business owners and they over assort. We're going to do too many things and they don't narrow down who they help, what their product is, what their focus is to make it clear. and 3 streams of revenue is a great place for a business to think about living. Is there's 3 things that drive our business. It's kind of hard when you just have one thing,
Right.
but when you've got 3 different key products or elements or services, you're in a healthy space. So, but more than that, it just becomes too chaotic. And
Right.
within those 3 spaces, you have to be really specific and intentional with what exactly you accomplish and what you do.
You do.
Right.
And you have to look at it from a labor perspective. I mean,
Yeah.
who's going to produce this and what kind of skill is required to produce this and how fast can it be made?
Right.
And, again, when you're thinking about like a custom cake versus a chocolate chip cookie dough, that's very different when you're making that. So I could teach a lot of people how to do certain elements, but there were things that I'm like, I can't afford for you to come in here and take your time learning how to ice a cake on my watch when I could have it to the customer in under 5 minutes, you know?
So then you go to, I'm going to just do it.
Correct.
And then you get in this cycle of I'm going to execute it myself.
Correct. And then because I've done that, then I didn't get to pay these bills this day. I didn't get to do any marketing that day. I didn't get to, attend an event. You get in that cycle where you're like, well, great. I've done everybody's jobs for them. So now I get to do my job at the hours of 5 a.m. until I turn the key. And then from the time I get home 12 hours later until I fall asleep with a computer on my lap, because by the time I left, I had been working 80 hours a week for months and months.
I remember
on
those
end.
days. Like I actually remember.
Yeah. And it was, there were good things going on.
Totally.
But I was so broken because the pieces had started to fall apart, especially financially, that I didn't have time to even process how do I even begin to put this back together.
Right.
And I don't know necessarily what would have, from a financial overhead standpoint, because, we took a $250,000 drop between 22 and 23. That's a very hard thing to recover from. And, there were just different elements to it that even looking back, I'm like, ooh, some of that I know what I would have done different. Some of it I don't. But, when you are just as a business owner, when you are so busy operating on it, it's that old adage, you need to be working on it and not in it. And I never could stop being in it ever. It would just followed me all through the night in my dreams. And then when I would wake up the next day, that's just how it was.
You ever have those dreams? I had back in the retail days, Black Friday nightmare dreams, you're stuck in Black Friday or waiting tables and you forgot your tables, forgot to go back to them.
Yeah.
I'm sure you had those nightmares. Yeah.
Well, it's funny. So when we built the location in 2020 in March or in October, when we opened that one, I actually designed that from floor to ceiling. And, it was just magical. And opening weekend, we had been physically moving the store for 5 days, plus it was during the holiday. So I had to not only put all the pieces where they needed to go, but then decorate it for Christmas to make it feel like magic for when we turned the key. And that Saturday of our first week in business, my husband came in and I was just sitting at the desk having a breakdown. And I think I was coming off of working 100, 110 hours.
My gosh.
And he was like, what's wrong? And I said, I have to go home. And he's like, are you kidding? It's opening weekend. And I said, here's the thing. I have lived and breathed and dreamed every square inch of this space for so long that you finally understand the weight that I have mentally been carrying in my head. So this is not new for me. I already knew it was going to be amazing because I saw every square inch of this. But now I'm tired. And he just said, okay, I think you should go home. But, when you're so visual that, that's, I think, a gift that God gave me. But it's also exhausting because I'm like, I've been running through every scenario, every paint swatch, every shelf, you name it. And so it was so amazing. But also I'm like, I have hit my wall.
I'm done. Like I got there.
I had staff that had literally moved in out of town that week to start working for me. So it's like, thank you for coming. Thank you for being part of my staff. Now wash your hands and let somebody else show you how to do your job because I got to go home, And so again, that's never good either. I mean, it's just, there are just a lot of pieces that if I had had some of those key pieces in place, then it could have looked different, maybe,
And that's, I think, brings us to the point that we have been talking about, which is every entrepreneur needs an operator and an executor. We really do. And when you go it alone, I mean, that's the one thing I would tell everybody to take from this podcast. First of all, you can come back from bad things, from hard things. And 100%. Those hard seasons create who you are going to be and get you ready for the next, right? Correct. So anytime you go through challenges, it's really about who do you become through that process?
Correct. And I think that is something as business owners, we need to talk more about. Because I remember texting one of my good friends who's a world-renowned Food Network chef. And I texted her and I said, I just wanted to let you know I'm closing. And she just said, you know what? I just closed my second restaurant. And she said, this is kind of that season in life where you are, and I can't remember the term, but it's the Japanese pottery where it gets broken and put back together with 24 karat gold. And she said, you're going to be so much better on the other side of this. And I have since had so many people that are like, oh yeah, I had to file for bankruptcy with my business. And I'm like, why aren't we talking about this more?
Why has nobody shared this?
Right? Like, why do we walk through this with shame?
It's so true.
Because this is part of life. It wasn't me saying like, I bought too big of a house. Like I operated a business. I mean, the day we went in to sign our final paperwork, they said, you're already the fourth business of the day that we have legally shut down. That is how hard this economy is on businesses. And my attorney said, you've done everything right. Like you have an amazing business, but it's just not set up for our economy right now to help you be successful. And so I think there is something of that I, in the grief of the loss, have had to understand it's okay. And this happens all the time. And we hear about big businesses filing for bankruptcy, really they're restructuring debt. And so my hope is that as business owners, we can kind of remove some of those gross stigmas a little bit and be a little more transparent about it. Because again, there's so much I would have learned. There's so much I've learned now that I want to share about that business. But I have to remind myself that the good always needs to outweigh the ending, because the joy that I am receiving now in running into people daily who tell me stories about their time in my space or just remember my face, you can't put a price tag on that. That doesn't matter that I closed my doors. That's the reason I had a business, is to be able to have those moments with people. And I'm so fortunate that they have still continued on.
And I have a lot of those memories from your space and the experience. And you helped me provide a lot of great experiences for my clients by providing custom, beautiful packages that were directly mailed to them. I mean, we had a beautiful partnership. And I think you're so right. It's every experience we have, it's about taking what you can from it to become better, to remember the best part of it, and then just learn from it.
Right.
And I think in business especially, there's so much shame to failure.
Right.
And I remember I had a similar situation in business where I went through something and I thought it was, this is many years ago. And I was so I was younger and I was so just bogged down by it. And as soon as I started talking about it with people that I respected, that were in a better position and had been through what I've been through, it was like, oh yeah, that happened to me. I went through that. And I'm like, why do y'all tell me this?
Right, exactly.
I thought it was just me. But you gain this confidence. I gained this confidence from that to go, well, if all these really exceptional people have done the stupid things I've done, I guess I'm going to be okay.
I know.
Because they are.
Exactly. Well, it's funny. I was talking to somebody who they have 5 very, very successful businesses. And I said something about the tax bill that we were left with, because no matter if you file bankruptcy or not, Uncle Sam wants his money. And so, we still have a great tax bill to have to take care of.
That's so exciting.
And
Good job, IRS.
I know,
We talked about the IRS
so
on an earlier
awesome.
podcast today.
It's so fun. And so my friend that I was talking to, she said, oh yeah, she said the day after we got one of our largest investors, an article in the Tennessean came out about our $400,000 tax bill. And she said, fortunately, we had just paid it off, but they called him out of a courtesy and said, we don't know if you just saw this. And he said, oh yeah, that's one of your bars. And she said, what do you mean? And he said, well, in the military where you get these bars, that's just one of those notches on your bars. And he said, and people that have been in business long enough, some of these things we don't even blink twice about, because it's part of business ownership. If you haven't done some of these things, then you probably haven't been in business long enough. And it so changed my perspective. It made me so grateful. My tax debt is not $400,000, but it was like such an eye-opening journey, because it made the table so equal for both of us. Of you understand kind of the trauma I'm coming out of, because you've been through it on a completely different scale with your business as well.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
It's just one of the bars.
It's just a bar.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I know there's so many amazing things coming. We don't have time to get into it all today, so you're going to have to come back.
Right.
But I know you will, because we'll talk, because we're friends. But Brooke, I'm so honored that you were chose to come today as my guest and share your journey, because it's only through us sharing hard things that we go through that other people can conquer them.
Correct.
Right? And so it's just another bar. And I think we can leave it at that. So we can find you on social media and follow what you're doing.
That's right. Yes.
And can you tell us, we'll put it in the show notes. Can you tell everybody where to find you?
Yes. So on social, I have two handles really that I run mostly. One is still my former business. It's Sugar Drop TN. And I've not changed that. It's been very intentional. Because I had a dear friend years ago that she said, the thing about it is you're Sugar Drop. And I said, well, but I'm me. And she said, no, you're Sugar Drop. People love Sugar Drop because they love you. And so that kind of gave me permission to say, okay, even though these physical four walls are not here, that's still me. Now, that's not my identity as a mom and as a believer and as a wife and all of those other things. But in this element in our community, I'm still Sugar Drop TN. And I walk in many buildings just earlier this week and got yelled at, Miss Sugar Drop, So you can follow me on Sugar Drop TN. You can follow me on She Who Feast. So I'm a local food contributor.
I know, I'm so excited about the new.
Yes, yeah, so exciting. And then my website is brookeodell.com.
Awesome. Well, Brooke, always a pleasure when I get some time with you. And thank you so much for sharing your journey. We'll have to come back and share what's the next chapter. Because today we talked about the past. So we'll talk about what's next time. For all of our listeners, viewers, thank you for tuning in. This has been an episode of the Lyndsay Stafford Show with Brooke O'Dell. So if you could give a 5-star rating, okay? We like 5 stars. We always shoot for 5 stars. If you don't like it, you can send me a private message. But if you like it, please give us a rating. It helps a lot. Share with a friend that you think might help. If this made an impact for you, tell Brooke, tell me, come tell us. Like, share, review, comment, all the things.